Maharaja. This is a game that came out a couple of years ago, and what I'm reviewing today is a new edition. I haven't played the original game, so I will not be able to compare, but I read that this game has been now redefined, retooled to match modern sensibilities, and I'm very modern and very sensible, so I'm happy with that. A disclaimer, I played the game only solitaire because it is a fairly meaty Eurogame to be played with adult Eurogamers, so with adult gamers. I cannot play it with my kids, and I don't have a game night yet because my fall plans the Delta variant. And so, solitaire it is for now when it comes to fairly heavy Eurogames. I play this solitaire in two ways. One, multiplayer solo. I simply created several notional players and I played the game controlling all characters and playing all characters to the best of my possibilities. I do that for war games all the time. From time to time I do it for Eurogames because I want to enjoy the design, and there's still, I find that there's still satisfaction in that. Here the only tricky thing is there are some unexpected elements when it comes to planning things, but I was still able to do it. And then I played the game solitaire proper, meaning the game does come with a bot, with an AI that you can use to play against. So you play two players, you execute your moves, and then the bot just destroys everything. It's very powerful. Goes around placing stuff on the board, collecting points right and left, and I find that pretty challenging, but also pretty satisfying. So this is my experience with the game, and I thought it'd be important for you to know as you watch my video. That's how my experience of the game, what my experience of the game is based on. The board, pretty nice, pretty large, mounted of course during the game. The players will be playing pieces on the board on these cities here, and they're trying to impress the Maharaja, who will move around the board. And basically it's an area control kind of game with the area that will score, will give you more resources determined by the movement of the Maharaja. Each player has a priest that represents the main center of agency of the player on the board. Where the priest goes is where the players can do stuff. Players will be placing shrines. They can place them in villages. You see those spaces there along the road. Shrines can also be placed in cities here on the external edge. And there is a limit to how many shrines you can place in villages, no limit to how many shrines you can place in each city. Very important, you start with a number of shrines on your personal player board, and that will be depleted. Then you will need to spend actions to take shrines from the general supply to your player board, so that then you can place them on the actual main board. You also want to build statues, very important, a lot more expensive to build than shrines. Statues can be built only in cities, and as you can see, there are slots there. There is a central slot, which is particularly valuable in terms of worship points. When the Maharaja comes to town, you will calculate how many worship points each player is able to produce based on the statue, shrines, and possibly the presence of their priest. So the central space is very valuable, but doesn't have any bonus. So there are two external spaces that have bonuses, and then for the suckers who come last, there are the external spaces that are worth less in terms of worship points than the central space and don't have any bonus related to them. So sad. We have characters, unique characters. We got a nice stack. Each player will be controlling a given character at any given time. You can change your character during the game, and each character has a unique ability. Some that can be used only once, some multiple times, some is just a status. And then there's also a number there, an initiative number, and so that will also determine the order in which players will go. The game will last 7 turns, as you can see from there. The first thing that we need to do is determine where the Maharaja goes. We look at this track and we look at the leftmost, looking from the board from that direction, the leftmost city is where the Maharaja is gonna go next. That would be that city right there. So first thing, we move the Maharaja there, and then we move this tile all the way there, which incidentally also acts as a turn counter, because now we know that we're playing turn 1. Next, we have the planning phase, in which the players plan their action using this really nice dial here, and each player gets 2 actions per turn, and so you get to move these arms here. I think this is just so adorable, because of course it looks like an old school watch, and so players will simply commit to certain actions. If you're playing multiplayer, everybody does that at the same time, and then ta-da, you reveal those, and then you resolve actions in the order determined by the numbers on the character tile. So the actions are, actually, before we get there, an important thing. I was talking about the priest, and the priest will move. The priest moves. In order to move, a priest needs to move through roads that have shrines. No shrines, they don't like that at all. They have infinite movement value. You can just go around. Another important thing, that's why I want to mention it before resolving actions, is that the priest can move before, after, or even during the resolution of an action, which is really counterintuitive, and it took me a while to figure out all of that imply. One last thing, 2 resources that we're going to use in the game and acquire: coins used to build stuff, and prestige points that actually are ultimately are victory points. With that in mind, actions may be to build 2 shrines, one of which must be in a city. That is to say, again, I can just move here, moving along my shrines, spend a coin to build that shrine, and then go there, and then go somewhere else, and then build another shrine somewhere else. That's the idea, that some actions have multiple parts, and again, you can move in between. If you move through your own shrines, you're good. No penalty there. If you move through villages that have other people's shrines, then you have to pay a coin to them, which is a bit annoying. Or another action, build a shrine with a discount of 1. Since the shrines cost 1, then that means for free. This is the trickiest of them all. Take one of those city tiles that you saw earlier and move it 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, to the left, basically changing the order in which the cities will be visited by our friend the Maharaja, and possibly also making such a way that a city will score multiple times in the game. Very tricky, because you're preparing all your worship in one city, and that city may score later, maybe even never, if that trick is done multiple times toward the end of the game. Change your character, simply get another one, as simple as that. Build a statue. Statues, again, are always built in a city where your priest is. Build a statue for a discount of 1 coin. The statues cost 10 coins normally when the Maharaja is not there. If you're building them last minute, oh my gosh, the Maharaja is coming, let's build a statue there to please him, just last minute. If you're building a statue in a city where the Maharaja is, then the cost is 12. But again, with this action, you get a discount of 1. But if instead you want to save on the opportunity cost, then you select this action, which lets you build a statue and a shrine for a single action, but no discounts. Collect 3 coins, pretty self-explanatory. As I told you, you only have a limited number of shrines that you can build at the beginning of the game. This action allows you to take 2 shrines from the general supply and put them in your personal supply. Trade in 3 coins for 2 prestige points. Build 2 shrines. So I think we're back. Yeah, I think we covered that. So these are the actions which you can do in any combination, including selecting the same action twice. So after a while, the board will have, well, a lot of stuff on it. There will be statues, there will be shrines, and so on and so forth. So after everybody has taken all of their actions, so we have the city scoring phase, in which we look at the city where the Maharaja is, and we see the number of worship points that each player generates. A statue in the outward ring is worth 2 points, so right now green has 2 worship points. Each shrine is 1 point, so yellow also has 2 worship points. Each priest is worth 1, and the statue in the middle of the city is worth 3. So right now, pink has 4 worship points, and so that's the best. And so basically, then you will collect money based on how well you're doing, if you're the first, second, third, or fourth player in terms of worship. That also, and if you have no worship there, you get a consolation prize of 3 coins. Then also, whoever has worship there, again in the order of who has the most worship, will get to collect one of these reward tiles. That may give you different stuff, like give you worship points, giving you shrines from the general supply to your personal board, and so on and so forth. As you can see from those indications there, not all of these are available every turn. The number, or which ones are available, depends on the number of players. And once a player selects one, they put it up here, so the player that chooses later have less of a choice. And at the end, you slide them all down. That pretty much sums it up, really, because you're gonna... that's the end of the turn. You continue like this turn after turn until you play 7 turns. There is a final scoring at the end, which is at the end you add 3 prestige points for each statue that you place on the map, 1 prestige point for every 5 coins that you still have, 2 prestige points for each city where you have the most worship points. So you go around the board and you check majority in all of them. And at the point, the player with the most prestige wins the game. There are several variants that the game comes with. The most important one, at least for me, is the Solitaire Variant. The bot will perform actions controlled by this stack of tiles. Also, there is a way in which the bot will place several random shrines on the board at the beginning of the game, so that you have to pay to move through those locations. At the beginning of each turn, you take these tiles, you draw 3 of them. 2 are face up, and 1 is face down. When it's time for the bot to resolve their actions, you draw another tile, and you only look at the bottom. That tells you which of these 3 tiles the bot is going to perform. In this case, would be the central one. And so you get a sense of what the bot may do, but since the tile is face down, you're never sure. So once you determine which tile is going to be used, then you simply resolve the actions that will allow the bot to collect coins, to perform, to build shrines or statues, to move to certain cities, spend money to build more statues or build shrines and collect money. And so again, the bot, of course, is a simplified player, is not very subtle, but when it comes to blunt building power and prestige point collection, that is not a foe to be underestimated. This is how you play Maharaja, at least in this version that has been redesigned for modern sensibilities. Maharaja, I think I will enjoy it a great deal after the pandemic when I can actually play it with adult friends. This is definitely not a game that I believe I would play with young children, who are right now my only partners in crime when it comes to gaming. I think that's gonna be fun because I like that area majority element. I like how everybody is planning secretly, and then you resolve things so that that creates an element of tension. In particular, I think there could be some real interesting moments when players are going to start moving those city tiles, because it's all about placing the Maharaja. It's all about where the Maharaja is. If you don't do well in those worshipping points, it's not just that you don't score well at the end of the game, which is bad enough. You also don't get coins, and so your engine is slowed down. So actually, there is a little bit of a positive loop here, of a positive reinforcement loop, in which doing well early on, scoring well early on, gives you more money, so you can build more statues, which allows you to score more. But I think there are also ways to get around that. Again, most importantly, you put all of your statues in one city, and then somebody messes up the order and sends it somewhere else. And so I look forward to playing the game with adult friends. But again, this can only be described as my hypothesis of that experience, not as my as my review of that experience. But what I can review is playing the game Solitaire. And playing the game Solitaire is an interesting puzzle. It's a little bit of an exercise in masochism, in my opinion, because the AI just feels so brutal, or at least maybe I haven't figured out a way of how to win against the AI. But that's interesting. Recently I played a game, Solitaire, and after a while I gave up because I felt that there weren't different strategies to try. I tried all that I could, and I lost interest. And to me, again, losing a solitaire game is not bad. What is bad is when I feel like there isn't anything new to try. Then I lose interest, because ultimately I play games because I like the process of strategizing. I like tough, interesting decision making. And Maharaja, although I keep getting pummeled by the AI, I feel like, but maybe if I can do something different. Maybe this time I completely ignore that. I'll try to go somewhere else. I try to come in at the last minute. I try to find the balance between seeing where the AI may go and try to remove that city from scoring and do something else. So it's a dynamic puzzle, which, mind you, has a strong element of luck. Because ultimately that's how the AI works. You can't read the intentions of the AI as you may try to read those of a human opponent. But at the same time, and it's interesting to me because, you know, Euro mechanics, Euro philosophy, and luck don't always go well together. And yet at the same time, it didn't bother me here. I like the fact that sometimes the AI just came in at the last minute and was able to completely mess up my master plan, or sometimes the AI would make some obvious mistakes. That's not the case, of course. It means it goes in some directions, does certain things that they give me a little bit of a breather there. Somehow the luck element and the strategizing element work well together. I also like the fact that against the AI, since the pace is so fast, it's me, then I do some moves for the AI, then we move the Maharaja, it's me again, then the AI. And even if you reverse that because of the characters, it still moves pretty fast. And this way, even if I had some pretty slow turns in which maybe all I did was, you know, collect some coins and build a shrine, that kind of stuff, I wasn't there sitting and waiting. And maybe if you play with 4 players, there may be a case where you have a slow turn where you're just collecting stuff. I collect coins, I trade some coins for prestige points, that kind of stuff. While other people are doing all the fun stuff and, you know, move, build something, keep moving, do something else, and then keep moving to end your movement in an area where you can do another action. Again, you don't have the risk of that ever happening to you if you're playing against the AI. And all the elements of the design to me work pretty well together. I like the characters that change and the fact that you can try to exploit different abilities at different times, that you can manipulate a turn order. That ability I don't like so much, but I get before the AI, so maybe there's something to consider there. And then the AI steals the character, and that's fine. It's supposed to drive me a little bit crazy, so I stay engaged. So the characters, the different, the range of actions that you can do and the kind of like chains that you can do, the shifting balance of powers from city to city, the partial unpredictability with the Maharaja will be, to me, all of these elements work well together and they contribute to create a game that even played solitaire is quite fun and quite engaging. So Maharaja, I can't tell if it's a great game played multiplayer. I think it'll be fun, but that's just an hypothesis. I can tell you that it's quite satisfying to play as a solitaire game, or at least that was my experience.